Um, Absolutely. Hey, I'm Dave Cowan. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator at MnDOT. Mitch, I see you hiding back there, and I think you count as MnDOT, so you're probably going to want to say hello too, right?
I suppose I do count as MnDOT. I put it in my name. So hi everyone, I am Mitch Kicker with State Aid at MnDOT, and so I help run the infrastructure program for Safe Routes to School.
I, I can go next. I'm Ellen Pillsbury with MDH, the Active Transportation Coordinator. Glad to be on the call, and I will pass it to my colleague Alyssa to introduce herself.
Hi, yep. So I'm also Alyssa, work for MDH in the Active Living team. I'm a public health associate here. Glad to be here.
Thanks, team. Glad to have a strong contingent of Alyssas on the call. So with that, I will get us started with our agenda today. First up, if you're okay to go first, Dave, we have Dave doing the MnDOT Safe Routes to School updates.
I don't mind going first. I can do that. You can see my screen?
You can see your screen.
Great. Well, it's June, which in the world of school usually means that we're kind of petering out as students are getting ready to head off for the summer. And some of you, I think, are heading off to the summer. So our updates are slim today. But I thought that I would run a couple of things past you that would be worth putting on your calendar to-do list. And the first of those is that we got a little bit ahead of ourselves with our 2022-2023 walk and bike to school day dates. Now is a good time to be reaching out to principals and superintendents about making sure these are on their calendar for next year. And we inadvertently chose the first Wednesday in October like it normally is, but that is also a holiday. And so it would be a really strange walk to school day with no students in school. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that both National Walk to School Day and Minnesota's Walk to School Day will be on October 12th this year, the second Wednesday. And we had communicated this out, I think, via, we communicated the incorrect dates via maybe an e-news and potentially the website for a little bit. So if you were a go-getter and ahead of the game, you might have grabbed the wrong date. So please take the opportunity to change that on your calendar. And know that both Winter Walk to School Day and Bike and Walk to School Day remain on the same dates that we had published previously. And then a couple of other few odds and ends. We've been working, I know a lot of you have served on various work groups to help us develop some of the tools and resources that were laid out in our 2020 strategic plan. And so, thank you for all of you that have helped participate in that. But in the next month or so, you should expect a couple of what I think are fairly robust tools for your work. We'll be able to talk about them maybe a little bit more in July or August, but we have a school siting toolkit, a primer for equity and safe routes to school planning and implementation. So I know a lot of you have been asking kind of, how do we do this better? And hopefully we'll be able to tell you about that. A resource on better engaging youth in safe routes to school. And speaking of resources, our website will be completely revamped and hopefully more accessible and easy for you all to navigate here towards the end of June, early July. So I'm particularly excited about a number of those resources. And then as some of you are kind of perhaps leaving for the summertime, maybe you're working in a school and you are lucky enough to have summers off. Just know that when you come back, we'll have our grant solicitations open as we usually do in the fall for Safe Routes to School projects. So just kind of drop that on your calendar. And know that Kelly Corbin, who is usually side by side with me on various Safe Routes to School activities, is now officially on maternity leave. So if you were hoping to get some technical assistance from her, or some help on anything, please just send that my way. Or if you were midstream on a conversation with her, maybe on an existing project or something you've been cooking up, please feel free to just loop me in, and I'm happy to try and pick that up where you all left off. And then finally, we're speaking of Kelly Corbin's maternity leave, we're a little bit behind on selecting our Bike to School Day poster contest winner, but we hope to have that out in our e-news early next week. And I'm kind of excited about it because we've been poking through the pile and there's some fun ones in there. So look forward to that. But Alyssa, that's all I've got for today. Always happy to answer questions if anybody has them, either related to something here that I've talked about or I don't know, anything with MnDOT in general.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. If folks have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or just jump off mute and let us know. I'm very excited about the website revamp resource center. Those are those things that, like, they're a lot of work. They take a long time to implement. And so that'll be really cool to see. Thanks, Dave. Next up on our agenda, we have SHIP funding opportunity, and we had said Alan was going to present, but I think Alyssa is going to present on that this morning. So I will turn it over to Alyssa. Alyssa, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Now, yes.
All right, I'm just gonna share you guys. Can you guys see my screen as well?
Yep.
Just going to share with you guys a quick overview of our SHIP active living work as we are wrapping up the SHIP planning for the new SHIP 5-year. So again, just a really brief overview of what's happening, what's going on, what's changing. So of course we have our 4 context areas. For planning purposes, we named them Minnesota Eats, Minnesota Moves, but Minnesota Moves is just active living. So we have, again, our 4 context areas, which used to be, we have some language change. It used to be content areas, now it's context. So just a little change in language there. So we have Minnesota Eats, Minnesota Moves, and Minnesota Commercial Tobacco-Free Living, as well as Minnesota Wellbeing. So those are our 4 areas, and they work all within the same settings that we have been working in. So work sites, schools, early childhood education, and healthcare. So for the most part, things have pretty much stayed the same. So thinking about statewide team charge, so like, what was our role? What did we have to do? And we had basically 4 things, was like guidance for how SHIP integrates health equity and community engagement, creating statewide and flexible activities, thinking about tier and minimum settings and behavioral requirements. And I'm going to go into those more in the next slide. Recommending context packages for our 4 setting areas. And then talking about monitoring TA and evaluation requirements. So thinking about statewide activities, why do we need them? What are they? So the statewide activities respond to feedback from local public health and stakeholders, that the idea that SHIP needs to demonstrate statewide impact. These statewide activities meet the statute evidence requirements. So per our statute, 75% of our activities have to be proven effective or promising, and 25% can be theory-based or culturally or ethnically focused. Having the space for these statewide activities really creates space for flexibility. So if enough people work on statewide activity, it's really easy to meet that statute requirement for the 75% proven effective. And then it also promotes this idea for layering, especially within the different settings, thinking about healthcare, schools, and whatnot. So it's a very effective for layering. So what will these statewide activities look like? For one, it's going to have a very high focus for TA and training. So there's going to be a lot of TA in comparison to flexible activities, which I'll go in after this, more TA here than there. Definitely more regular check-in meetings. And it kind of is supporting this like state-led work to help do the change more upstream. And can you have more required work in evaluation, communication, and TA and training? So that's kind of the main point, is that in comparison to flexible activities, there's definitely more TA and training and evaluation work that needs to be put in. So thinking more about flexible activities, why do we have them? They're kind of just focused on supporting our strategic directions, and it really creates this space for the community-driven work in our different context areas. So the eats, moves, tobacco-free living, and well-being. It also provides the opportunity to work on theory-based and culturally informed work, in addition to the proven effective and promising activities. So this is like more focused. It can be more focused on the grassroots initiatives and things like that. It doesn't necessarily need that strong evidence base that we need in the statewide activities. There's definitely more flexibility in the flexible activities. So again, it can also support activities where there's community momentum from a prior grant. So if we had a prior grant that's no longer being funded, you can use that. You can use a flexible activity to kind of further that work. And then it's meant to reflect activities that can be supportive. It's not meant to represent everything else. So you still will have a variance option. So this is not necessarily a catch-all. This is kind of an actual crafted list of flexible activities. So again, it's a menu of intentionally selected activities that can advance strategic directions. As I stated previously, this will receive less statewide TA. There will be fewer evaluation requirements. And again, this is not replacing the variance option. That variance option is still going to be there. So kind of what are our strategic directions for SHIP Active Living? We have 3 big ones. Again, first one is all people in Minnesota move regularly throughout the day. So making sure that that movement is, you have opportunities for movement throughout your day. It's natural, it's easy, it's convenient. Number 2 is activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. There was some wordsmithing on this. It used to be like safe routes to safe destinations. So we kind of changed it because we thought that no matter where you're going, you should have a friendly route to go. You should have a safe route there, regardless of where you're going. And then 3 is work to reduce auto trips by supporting investments in walking, biking, and transit. So those are kind of our 3 big strategic directions in our new SHIP 5-year. So thinking about our statewide activities, we have the 3 big ones. So the first one is planning with a focus on safety and access for active transportation and mobility. Second one is safe routes to school. And the third one is physical activity at parks and recreation. As far as safe routes to school go, we're not changing anything. You guys are all doing it really well. So we're not recommending any big changes there. Just kind of keep doing what you're doing. As far as the third one, physical activity at parks and recreation, that was actually something that came out of conversation with you guys and kind of hearing your feedback that you wanted more focus on recreation a little bit, more focus on recreation and more building up the park system in your local areas. So we definitely heard you guys and brought that activity into the mix. So again, these are our 3 statewide activities. And then we have an example list of some flexible activities. So this is some flexible activities in multiple settings. This is not comprehensive by any means. It's just an example list. So for example, schools, you have outdoor classrooms and physical activity in nature, healthcare, exercise, and medicine. So this is just an example list, definitely not comprehensive. This is our logic model, our theory of change. I won't get too into this, but know that again, you have our strategic directions on the left and kind of what we want our long-term outcomes to be, which are our 3, people in Minnesota move regularly because there's opportunities. So again, this is just laid out very more complexly. So thinking about what's shifting, actually not much, to be quite honest. There was some things that had shifted in our transition years. For example, we added well-being, we added the health equity activity requirements, the tier differences. And so we're kind of all bringing that still to our next SHIP 5-year. I would say the main thing that's changing is this idea of the statewide activities and the flexible activities and the required 3-year work plan and the activity mix. So again, not that huge of a change. We're actually kind of just implementing, bringing what we've been doing these last 2 years and transitioning over to the new SHIP year. So don't have to worry about too much changing. So thinking about tiers, again, we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 is our lowest funded, smaller communities. Tier 2 is in the middle, and tier 3 are very large communities. And so just explaining the idea of the statewide activities and flexible activities by tier. So tier 1, we're changing it to be 2 statewide activities. Tier 2, we want to see 4 statewide activities from you guys. And then tier 3, we want about 4 to 5 statewide activities. Thinking about TA and training, since we've had 2 transition years and SHIP is on a 5-year cycle, we only have a 3-year time arc of TA and training. We have lots of foundational skills building for this 3 years. We're gonna have lots of trainings about PSC changes, trauma-informed approaches, especially as in regards to the well-being work and how our work intersects with well-being, facilitation, advocacy, and communication. So those are all some skill building trainings that are going to be in the works. Definitely gonna have more trainings about the context packages and what we expect. And of course, we're always going to keep our regional and statewide meetings and coffee chats and webinars. Evaluation, don't have to get too in the weeds on this one. This is just kind of showing what the statute kind of says for SHIP in regards to state and local level roles. But again, don't have to get too into that one. So what are we kind of recommending for this 3-year SHIP 5? In terms of staffing reporting, we want to submit data to partner sites, community leadership teams, and collaborate partners and work plan related items. In terms of us at OSHI, we're all local public health is required to participate in evaluation of statewide activities. So in your work plans, you want to be reporting key indicators, participating in evaluation, and we're also going to provide additional tier 1 support. So again, don't have to get too into the weeds on that one. And thinking about our indicators here at OSHI. So a lot of our indicators here at OSHI are medium-term outcomes. We're not super focused on the long-term outcomes in terms of the population impact, only because SHIP is usually a 5-year cycle, and we don't want to think too far ahead because it's really hard to have those long-term outcomes in 5 years. And so just want to stress that in terms of us, we really want to focus on these medium-term outcomes and don't want to think too far into the future. We want to focus on PSC supports and changing individual behaviors. So what are our indicators here at OSHI? At OSHI, it's tied to theories of change and strategic goals. A subset of most important metrics will be tracked over time, and that we want them to represent OSHI's work overall. So those are our 3 indicators. And that's it. If you have any questions, super open.
I have a general question, but I was going to pause for a second, see if anybody else wanted to ask something before I do.
I think you're clear, Dave. No one's coming off mute, and I don't see anything in the chat. Go for it.
Okay. Alyssa or Ellen, I'm wondering, there are a lot of SHIP folks on the call, but there's also a lot of folks that are not. So either working in nonprofits or in school districts. Like, I know it's hard to summarize what you just did there, but what's the takeaway for them in terms of working with their SHIP folks locally? Like, what can they do? What's like an action item or a takeaway that might be useful to them?
In terms of summarizing, I would say this idea of flexible activities is super new, and the fact that it doesn't have to be it focuses more on cultural relevancy and that idea. So if people either in advocacy groups are working with priority populations, the flexible activities is a really good way to kind of do that community driven work and that grassroots work. So it definitely provides opportunities for people who may be working with certain populations to do that work and not feel constrained. So I'd say that's definitely a big takeaway, is that this introduction of the more flexible activities.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. There was a lot in that presentation. I feel like there were some familiar things in there, and I also learned a lot. So I appreciate your team pulling that together for all of us. I think I'm going to keep us moving because we have a very full agenda today. Dave's like, things are winding down, but we've got lots to talk about, even though the school year is wrapping up. So we've got some what we're thinking of as safe routes success stories that we're really excited that folks have been willing to share about today. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Hoffman. I'm pretty sure I see you on the call there. Hello. And one of your team members, Sam, or a partner, Sam, to talk about what's been going on over in New Ulm. And you should be able to share screen if you would like to run your own slides. I'm also happy to run them for you if you would like me to do that.
Sam, do you want me to go ahead and?
Yeah, if you want to, Rose, that'd be great.
Okay. So everybody should be able to see my Safe Routes to School slide here. I'm Melissa Huffman. I am a nurse with Brown County Public Health, and I'm also SHIP staff for Brown Nicollet LeSueur Waseca.
And I am Sam Gatton, the Safe Routes to School coordinator at New Ulm.
So I have been with SHIP since the beginning, 2009, way back when. And we were so fortunate to also have in the New Ulm area a project called Heart of New Ulm start at the same time. And many of you have probably heard of Heart of New Ulm. It's been an amazing collaboration. It started off as a 10-year study to focus on eliminating heart attacks in the New Ulm zip code, which is 56073. And it was with Minneapolis Heart Institute, and they chose our area to do this study. And since then, it's transitioned to a community-owned project. And like I said, it's just been an excellent collaboration because we both acknowledge SHIP and Heart of New Ulm. We're very well aware in this world of SHIP and the rest of you who aren't in SHIP, but we know that health occurs outside of those clinic walls. 80% of our health is influenced by what happens within our community where we live, work, learn, play. And SHIP and Heart of New Ulm is all about looking at policies, looking at our systems, our environments to make that healthy choice the easy choice. So way back in 2013, we invited Mark Fenton to our community and we did a walkability workshop. And that workshop was pretty awesome. It pulled together a great report for us that we can kind of use to guide our work. You don't necessarily obviously have to bring Mark Fenton in, but that's what we did. And it's just been an excellent starting platform. So that way we kind of know where to go. We also continue to use other tools, you know, to support this work, like our parent surveys, classroom tallies, our data from law enforcement. We have a lot of speed indicators out there. And then really just kind of letting people know, like, continue to be familiar with what your resources are. Like, these calls are amazing. The updates from Dave. It's so important to know what your resources are from SHIP, Safe Routes to School, MnDOT, things like that. So we formed a couple of action teams. Heart of New Ulm actually has 7 different action teams, including Safe Routes to School, including this Coalition for Active, Safe, and Healthy Streets. Heart of New Ulm also has a worksite wellness action team and a food environment action team and a downtown action team, mental health and wellness action team, a chemical health action team. I'm on practically all of them except for maybe 2. But it is so important to have these committees. It really keeps us in the loop. We used to meet monthly. We meet every other month now. But we've had plans come from these teams, and we have people then who go to city council meetings and really support this work. So you can see who's on our Coalition for Active, Safe, and Healthy Streets. I mean, we have people from the county highway department, we have people from the city department, we have community members, we have school leaders, and then in our Safe Routes to School team, school staff, city officials, obviously public health, county, and SHIP staff. So all of these people are so important because they really do influence our next steps, and their input is incredibly valuable. So yeah, we did a complete streets policy in October of 2016. And then we received bicycle friendly designation at the bronze level since 2017, and that's been consistent. So I'll let Sam take it away from here.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go through some of successes through the 60/60 framework, and I'll start with one of my favorite, which is our walking to school day celebrations. So this has been a feature celebration in New Ulm since 2015. There's been some slight variations through the years, but the general format is we recruit volunteers. Oh, I saw that comment. Is the audio doubling it? Do I sound not so good?
It's getting a little bit better, but you were having a little bit of like echoing stuff for a second there.
Try that. Hopefully that might be a little bit better.
That is significantly better. Yes, thanks, Sam.
Awesome. Okay. And so these celebrations will recruit volunteers from the hospital, city officials, parents, and we have 4 schools that we provide walking school buses for. So we'll pick maybe 2 to 3 locations to depart from throughout the town. We'll get the word out there that we're going to be celebrating that day. And we walk to school. It's definitely one of my favorite days. I've been able to walk with the kids the last couple of celebrations and gotten a lot of quotes that are just awesome from the kids, just excited to walk to school. Yeah, excellent celebration. We also did these wayfinding signs, which was done before I started working here. But I think it's pretty awesome because we're fortunate to have a lot of students living near our school sites. So it's a good reminder that, you can get to school pretty closely. We also have maps that we provide every year. And so we'll provide these maps. You can see it in the bottom right corner with safety tips for biking and walking. So a walking map on one side, a biking map on the other. And these can be found throughout town. At like the Chamber of Commerce, different businesses, but then we also make sure we're providing these anytime we're doing any safe routes tabling. So like at open house at the beginning of the year and parent teacher conferences, we have those available. We can go on to the next slide.
Let me just stop share and share again, Sam. For some reason, it froze on me.
Okay. Solving our technical issues today.
No, 2 years into fully remote, there's still things to be learning.
Here we go.
Cool. Yeah, some of our educational success stories. One that's allowed us to provide various types of bicycle education is our bicycle fleet that you can see on the top left there. So this fleet is in a trailer. It's housed by the public schools, but gets used by various classes, the other schools in town, and different groups. This last fall, I was able to use this bicycle fleet when we launched a after-school bicycle club for our elementary and middle school students. I had a blast leading this club, but I think it's a really good idea to do something after school with the Walk Bike Fun if you're having a hard time getting it implemented into classes. I know there's a lot of, time restraints on teachers, but this can be a good way to sort of introduce the curriculum. And, you can show the teachers that this is how it could probably run in your own classroom. So that was a lot of fun. It was, I think, 8 weeks, and we did it just once a week after school. That bottom picture there is the kids doing the melon drop with the Walk Bike Fun curriculum. And we've also done other bike expos a couple times. Those were both before I started in this work, but essentially having different like bicycle maintenance stations, bike rodeo for kids, kind of just a day of bicycling. And then lastly, I got on there, we've also done some educational messages through social media and in print, and we've branded it the See Safe Smart campaign. So it's providing messages on pedestrian, driver, and bicycle safety. We can go on to the next slide. So evaluation, we've used MnDOT's evaluation tools, starting with the student travel tally. I think the travel tally is important just to kind of get a sense of the scope of how students are getting to school. One unique way that we've used it though, this last October, was using it the week of walk and bike to school day. So we could get a sense of how impactful those encouragement programs are, or those events are, because we would get numbers of how many kids maybe participated in the walking school bus, but that could have possibly been just the kids that were already walking to school. But so we were actually able to see that when we did the student tally on the right there, you can see the Tuesday we had 83 total students walking and biking, but on Wednesday, walk to school day, that number increased by almost 40. So that's been kind of cool. We also use the parent surveys. They've helped make the case for infrastructure improvements throughout town. So that's just kind of helped us keep tabs on a list of where people see problems in the community, and we can always revisit that and look where we can, possibly make some changes. If things are coming up on the capital improvement plan, we're aware because we've created that list with the help of that parent survey. And then some other evaluation tools. We've used speed signs that our police department will, they get the data from it, but they can share the speed of vehicles traveling on roads, which has been important for making infrastructure changes and bringing things to city council like that if we have the data on how fast people are going. And then recently we got an eco counter, which we're still kind of figuring out how we're gonna put it to best use, but right now we have it on a mid-block crossing that's near the schools, and it's been awesome just to get the data from it, how many times that gets used. You see a big spike every morning, 30 people using it before school and 30 people after school. So that's been really good, and we're excited to keep using that. Oh, and eco counter, it just it's basically attached to, I have it on like a light post, but it counts the people that are walking across that crosswalk right there. And then you can either get the data sent to you. Ours, you go like with a Bluetooth connection and kind of get the data off of it, and then you can see how many people at what times a day were.
Cool. So we'll go on to this next slide, engineering. So we've done a lot of different infrastructure improvements based on all of these groups and all of these amazing evaluation tools we have. We've done diagonal crosswalks at each school. We completed a complete streets policy was adopted by the city in 2016. We've improved the arrival and dismissal process at the schools basically just by separating modes of travel at all schools, having a separate pickup and drop off area just for buses. One street is just for buses and then another is just for vehicles. Doing curb extensions at 2 different school locations. And then an amazing mid-block pedestrian refuge island near 2 schools. Really helped there. The stop for pedestrian and crosswalk signs we installed at 2 different locations. More enhanced crosswalks installed near a really busy highway on 14. And then our most recent one was a roundabout that was installed outside of the high school. So all of these infrastructure improvements were recommendations that came out of that walkability workshop. So it's been pretty cool to see from 2013 all of the changes. But I think one big takeaway is that it takes so much time, and we've had these committees in place since the beginning, having a Safe Routes to School plan in 2013, having this walkability report, and then, just getting these infrastructure things done. So it just takes time. Just keep in mind, it has to go through a lot of different commissions or boards for approval, and they don't necessarily always meet monthly. So it's always good to have, to just understand things take time. I think we all are aware of that, but. Sorry about that, Sam. Here you go.
And then lastly, an upcoming project that we are working on right now. We just got our contract signed. We have a boost grant project for a traffic safety playground. So we have a lot of students who do live near the schools, but we also have a pretty big rural population of students who get bused in, who really might not get the opportunity to learn how to, ride their bicycles in town unless they get to do it at school. So we're going to work on this project to put in this traffic safety playground. So I got 2 photos of it. One's just a little more zoomed in, but on the left there is our public middle school. On the right is our public elementary school. And we have this, what used to be a parking lot, but now is just a play area. They have basketball courts and, 4 square painted on there, but we're going to paint a traffic safety playground on there right before school starts is the plan. And so, yeah, that's what we're working on currently. And I think that's it for our slides.
Questions? Yeah, and I don't think Sam, I didn't even really brag about when you did that drone thing where you created a video, so that way the Safe Routes to School and the Coalition for Active, Safe, Healthy Streets could actually visualize the pick up and drop off process. So you went like above and beyond in some of the some of the tools and tricks.
Yeah, drone footage is amazing, just to, I don't know, get a sense of what's going on the ground.
Very cool.
Well, I always have questions if nobody else does. Melissa or Sam, I was wondering, first of all, what an impressive stretch of work, especially considering that with all of those teams that you talked about, you're probably working on all of those and kind of have a similar timeline. I just think from 2013 to now, there's just been so much work that you've done there. It's really impressive. When I was looking at your infrastructure project list, I was kind of wondering, you mentioned your complete streets policy back in 2016. Like, in implementation of those infrastructure projects, did you see the Complete Streets policy playing a hand? Like, is there something you could talk to the group about, how that's impacted your safe routes work?
You know, for sure. I mean, from the beginning, we had an initial city engineer, and then his assistant, and then his assistant is now like the lead city engineer. It's just amazing to see their change in support. I mean, would you agree, Sam? And I think from the beginning, I feel like there was kind of this thought of, I think they took it personally, like we were telling them they weren't doing. So I think that Complete Streets policy, that understanding, that acknowledgement of now they're the ones that are advocating for it and we don't have to ask them. So yes, having that policy in place, having those recommendations in place, having them now advocate, having them seek out grants and complete them themselves, it's just been really amazing. It's been wonderful to see that growth. And I do feel that Complete Streets policy helps because it puts value in there, and our city council understands it, and our community understands that how we create our systems impact how we move about.
That's inspiring to hear.
CJ asked in the chat who created the layout for the traffic safety playground. That's not the final layout that you saw, but we did talk about what does exist in New Ulm that our students are going to need to know how to navigate on their bicycle. I mean, kind of created a list of what we wanted included in that. And it will be used for formal education. Hopefully that's one of, our main reasons, is to kind of bring some excitement to using walk, bike, fun curriculum in formal education, but it'll also be used for after school childcare programs, after school bicycle club, and any signage for public usage. That's a good idea, but we don't have anything in plan to do that, but that would be really beneficial.
Yeah. And New Ulm has, so they have how many public schools does New Ulm have? New Ulm has one public school. There are 4 different building sites. There's an early learning center. There's an elementary, grades 1 through 4. Then there's a middle school, grades 5 through 8, and then a high school, grades 9 through 12. And then on that same campus where Sam showed that playground, then there's the before and after school Kids Connection program. And then New Ulm also has a private Lutheran school and then a private Catholic school. So there's quite a few schools just right in New Ulm that will have pretty close access. And that was another reason why that destination or that spot was chosen, because it is so close to the middle school and the elementary campus, and then that before and after school program site.
Folks have had a lot of really good questions. I'm going to echo what Dave said. This is like representing a lot of work in a short period of time, and I'm sure we could spend a lot of time asking you more questions. But I do know we have an update from the SRDC folks, and I want to make sure they get some time before this hour is very quickly up. But want to encourage folks, if you have more questions, to continue to put those in the chat. And hopefully Melissa and Sam will be able to see those as well. Thank you so much for sharing about your work. It is so it's like always great to hear about when things are going well and all the things are working, and there's a lot of pieces that you're juggling to make that work happen. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to the folks at SRDC. I think Jessica is going to be presenting, and then Rosemary.
Yes, let me get to sharing my screen because I'll be the one that's controlling the slides today. So, and are you all seeing our first slide in our slide deck?
We are. Go for it.
Excellent. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting Jessica and myself to come present today. And just to give you a little bit of context, I'm just going to let you know a little bit about what our organization and some of the transition that we had. So Just as a little background, Jessica actually joined the SRDC team in spring of 2018, and followed by Jason, who's joined summer of 2019, and then myself, who joined early fall, late fall, well, yeah, September of 2019. So when we actually did not have a Safe Routes to School project in that 2019 to 2020 school year, but our very first one would actually be but our very first Safe Routes to School planning process would be in 2020. Now, Jessica had previous experience with getting the documents up to spec and ADA compliancy, but this was really kind of a moment where, as an organization, not only was there a transition in staff, but there was a transition in how we approached Safe Routes to School work. In previous years, a lot of these efforts were kind of siloed. One person kind of took hold of the whole project or did all the planning work and everything associated with that. And we saw that we had the advantage of having people with very distinct talents, and it all seemed to be very complementary. So Jackson we all kind of started out with Jackson at the very same level of experience as far as, you know, going through the planning process, doing the outreach and all that. And we've had 4 Safe Routes to School plans in the last couple of years, and I'd be one to brag. I think that they have been wildly successful. It's also been the first year where we had access to ArcGIS Collector, and we've kind of been learning as we go on how to use that technology and how to upkeep it using our MnDOT planning grant that we get on a rotating basis. So all of these have some type of technological maps or something or some type of data that we can update as projects continue and kind of continue that enthusiasm for safe routes. So first one I'm going to kind of talk about is the Jackson County Consolidated School District. So this one, we had 2 distinct areas where schools are at in the Jackson County, and we treated this like 2 separate Safe Routes to School plans, one for Jackson and then one for Lakefield. They had previously had a Safe Routes to School plan written back in 2013, and several of those strategies had been completed. However, as we'll note later on, planning does not have that endpoint. And as context changes and strategies were achieved, it was kind of time to update those. So going over on the Lakefield side of things, same thing, they had their plan in 2013, but their middle school was going to be moved to a location that is adjacent to the elementary school. And something that had been noted in the previous plan and is a project that I know that folks are trying to work on right now is getting the south side of Lakefield connected to the rest of the community. Right now, it's kind of chopped in half by a county state aid highway, and we're trying to get that kind of connection going. So I'm going to, on the next one, is pass this on to Jessica, who will talk about Tyler, Adrian, some of those major planning considerations, and some of the technical assistance we offered.
Okay. So at the same time that we were working with Jackson and Lakefield, we were also working on the Safe Routes to School plan with Tyler. And Tyler had a unique situation in that when we started with them, the elementary school was in the city of Ruthven, their middle school was in the city of Russell, and then the high school was in Tyler. But they were going to be consolidating everything into a brand new school building in Tyler that was on the southwest side of town, where their current high school was on the north central part of town. And it's also separated by a railroad track. So the city had a lot of infrastructure that was not in place anymore with this new school location. And the school was set to be started in fall 2021 for students to be coming in. So we were coming in that year right before. They were already starting construction on the school, but they needed to figure out what to do with Safe Routes to School infrastructure and how to make sure people could cross the railroads safely and get to a school where there's not infrastructure there. And you'll see in this picture, this is actually the county highway that the school is sitting on the left-hand side behind the cornfield. That's where the school was being built. And you'll see it's just a highway. There's no sidewalks along there, but it is a wide highway. So that's one of the things that we looked at when we were doing our walk audit is there a way to put in a bike lane temporarily that would at least give students a safe way to get to the school. And that's one of the things that they did in that first year, is just to put in a temporary bike lane along the one side of the road where students could walk and bike safely. Next slide. So one of the things that we did for technical assistance was creating 2 different maps for RTR schools, and looking at a gap map that would function in helping them to see where their struggles were with sidewalks, and what they needed to have done for infrastructure and their goals for infrastructure. And the green markings on the map itself is where there's current walking and biking routes. And on Strong Street, up at the very top of that map, is actually where the high school currently was. And so it's crossing that railroad track. You'll see that there's a lot of red going to the school itself. So we needed to address all of that. And then there was also a map that was created for that coming school year that would help. We knew that there wasn't going to be infrastructure currently in place at the time that the school was started in fall of 2021. So we wanted to create a map for teachers and students and their parents to be able to see routes that are going to be safer for them to get to the school at this time until that full infrastructure was created. Next slide. All right. And I will say with Tyler as well, one of the cool things is that while we were working on the planning process, they were also applying for a boost grant during that time. And they received that boost grant and were able to purchase crossing guard signage, a flashing crosswalk sign for Highway 14. And then they also worked with MnDOT to update the sidewalks along Highway 14, which is going to be an important roadway for students and people in the community to walk and bike. So they got that, and most of those projects were completed by fall of 2021 when the school opened, which is great to see. And we did do a hazard observation after the school opened in fall of 2021 with them, just to check to see how it was going, if there was any issues with students not knowing how to cross, or if there was any traffic issues. And actually, we gave them a gold star for that. They had no issues. They had thought through everything. It was great to see. And so this past year, we worked with the city of Adrian on their safe routes to school plan. And their biggest concerns was that there was no direct path between the elementary school and then the middle school and high school. And there was actually a major collector highway in the middle of those 2 schools. So that created an issue. And due to that lack of sidewalk connectivity, students were forced to use the roadways to walk and bike, and they were already congested anyways because people were parking alongside of them. And then the other issue with that was that students were often walking to the baseball fields, the city pool area, and Come and Go, which was located across town, and there was little sidewalk connectivity from that school to that area. So those are the big things that we needed to address in the plan. Next slide. So the big recommendations for Adrian were to do those infrastructure crossings. You'll see all the yellow markings along the map are recommended corridor improvements and recommended infrastructure. So that long line that goes up to the very top of the map is actually the route from the high school to Come and Go and to those ball fields. So that's a huge project that needs to be accomplished. Adrian actually did apply for an infrastructure grant during this process. They didn't receive it, but it was a good learning process for them to get started in that, and they have plans to apply this next year. Next slide.
While you're transitioning slides, I'm just going to note we're almost at time for our hour. If folks can stay on, you are more than welcome to stay on. I'm very excited to see the rest of this presentation. But wondering for folks who do have to drop off, if Rosemary and Jessica, you might be willing to take questions over email. Awesome, thank you. Please continue. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. All right, so some of the other recommendations then for program recommendations, we're implementing that walk, bike, fun curriculum and bike rodeos as well into this. And a really great, exciting thing for Adrian was at the wrap up of this planning process at the end of April, they actually got right away to beginning implementation for the program goals. So they did their first walk to school day ever for the city on May 4th. They had quite a few students that walked, and we saw through the walk audit and through the hazard observations that there were barely any students walking or biking to school during that time in the fall. So it was great to see that implementation right away in May. They also had community members. The Laverne Rotary and Adrian Police Department came into the 3rd grade classroom in May to provide bike safety training and also give away free bike helmets. So the first of that kind as well within the city. So it was great to see, and we look forward to their continued progression in implementing this. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about the Safe Routes to School infrastructure grants. We had 4 of our communities within our 9 counties apply for grants, and we had 3 of them were awarded those infrastructure grants. And we also had the City of Tracy awarded a planning grant for this coming year. We'll begin working with them. A really interesting thing about Tracy that we're looking forward to having to handle is that currently they have a policy that students aren't supposed to walk or bike to school because of the train track that's in the middle of the community. So we've already dealt with that with Tyler. It'll be great to start implementing that and show them that you can create safe routes still, even though that there's a train track. Next slide.
All right, so I'm going to kind of wrap things up with our key takeaways and kind of what we've taken away from this 2-year growing period that we've had, growing pain period. Just a quick note on Tracy. I live in Tracy, and let me tell you, people do walk and bike to school, whether it's against the rules or not, especially the high schoolers, they're biking to school. They're not taking the bus. So big key takeaways, kind of it's organized by planning grant. One is that planning for safe routes to school is an ongoing process. There, just like anything that's a planning process, there is no end point. There's no point where you've accomplished everything, right? A lot of things change, such as the new elementary school being built in Lakefield. I just love this picture with the bench behind the fence, because I think it's great that it's cut off from the sidewalk. Along with, making sure that you have those community leaders and organizations that are going to keep up those efforts and kind of keep them alive, ignited throughout. And of course, as construction or anything happens in the area, anything can change how your traffic patterns go, or anything can become a traffic generator. I think here, one of these houses in Jackson, it actually ended up becoming a food pantry too. So looking at how development's happening along that area, it makes sense to make sure that we're, having people aware how to get to places there and back safely. Another thing, it's one of those things that we all know as planners, but sometimes it's really hard to strike home, is that investing in safe routes to school projects enhances overall community development. So when we were talking about Tyler, MnDOT was actually coming through and doing their Minnesota 14 project. So doing safe routes to school planning the same year that you're relocating the school, also the same year that you have a major ADA project coming through, really kind of kept Tyler on their toes, and they were able to communicate with MnDOT throughout the process. And they ended up with overall a pretty good project that looks great on Highway 14, and it kind of enhances how everything else is supposed to work. And it was great to see that they were actually able to jump onto that. And then the other things that have been noted too is that south of that new location where the school is, will be a hospital. That's been, the hospital is being relocated to that same area. And I believe a Dollar General has shown interest in coming to the same kind of land area where the hospital and the school are. So by having this infrastructure in place already, we don't have an issue. And I think some of us that are in rural communities, we see it where a Dollar General is like kind of opened up across a county road or something, or just outside of city limits. And then you have like a lot of dangerous crossing happening because the infrastructure wasn't there. Well, it's in place and it's been kind of an economic driver. Also, the school at Tyler, they weren't expecting to be filled within the first year, but they are completely filled as far as the new school goes. And it's been really interesting to see how many people have actually, not that Tyler's growing as much in population, but there are a lot of people that are staying in Tyler now and a lot less homes for sale in the area. So it's like kind of becoming more of an attractive community to live in. And the last, and I think most important, most obvious point to take away is that no data is complete without that community input. So with Adrian, this was our first time we were actually able to be out in schools and places, because our other planning, safe routes to school planning processes all happened during COVID. So everything was kind of out of whack data wise, but being able to do the outreach at the schools was one of our biggest advantages this year, especially when we did this kind of like little democracy project. When we did that at parent teacher conferences, and I was in charge of like, distracting the kids with candy and trivia and horrible jokes. And they all made sure that their parents, a lot of them were actually making sure that their parents were putting down dots for speed of traffic, which is kind of counterintuitive. Usually don't have kids that are afraid of fast cars coming by, but they really noted that area between the high school and elementary, a lot of cars went fast and they were scared of that. So, and also Adrian was the only school that actually had students involved in the safe routes to school planning process. So it was kind of good to hear firsthand from a student going, no, I would not do that. No, this is where I'm going to cross. This is where I'm going to walk on the road. And it really made those plans holistic and more realistic to implement in the future. So of course, if anybody has questions, I know we're over our limit, but if anybody's curious, I gave you all our planning team contacts. Jason's typically the lead on these, but we all have our niches. And I think that that's what's been probably that driving force that makes our plan so far very successful. So yeah, and I'll stop sharing now unless anybody wants to see any other slides.
And I do see that Alyssa asked if it was common or unusual that schools have a policy that you can't walk or bike to school. In our situation, we don't see it very often, but we did have, with Adrian, they were discouraging students to walk to school or bike to school because of the lack of infrastructure between the two schools. But still students do it all the time, especially high school students walk to the elementary school because of the bus routes as well. So that was one of those things. But typically, no, we don't have that.
Anybody else have any other questions? I'm scanning the chat. I don't think I see any other things, questions, just some comments about your work. There was a lot in there. You're doing a lot of things. And appreciate you calling out some of the specific things around implementing projects like these during COVID times. All right, let's see. More comments in the chat, which are great. Thanks to everyone who works on safe routes to school plans. Yes, I would echo that. And then some walk bike updates from Angela. Before we shift over to that, anybody else have any other questions or comments? Otherwise I will. Dave, you look like you might want to come off mute. I can't tell.
Thought about it, but no, I'm good.
Okay. Cool. Well, then I will thank Rosemary and Jessica for their time and for this presentation. I think it was really great, and we were really fortunate to have you on the call today. And I'm sorry we ran over time and some folks had to drop off, but very glad that we record our meetings for just this reason, so that folks can access all of the content afterward. with that, I will see if Angela, you want to give a 90-second update before we call it adjourned on this very late call that we will do better time management of next meeting as we're learning.
Yeah, no problem. I just put our upcoming training dates in the chat too, but very briefly, and maybe folks at MoveMN, if you could summarize what I put in the chat and send it in a follow-up email, that might be really helpful. But basically, I just wanted to remind you all that what kind of technical assistance Bike and Men can offer, because it seems to be something not a lot of people know about. So in addition to walk, bike, fun trainings, we can come lead rides with your students when they're kind of reaching their final, reaching the end of the curriculum. We can also assist with maintenance, and we can also do something we just did in Rochester, which is ambassador training, which is training your educators on how to lead bike rodeos and other safety events. We have some trainings coming up. So if you're in the area, Elk River and Adrian are coming up. So those would be great to sign up. We have lots of room. We still have capacity to do more walk, bike, fun trainings. I know that the kind of like cutoff has already passed, but we have a lot of capacity to do that. And then finally, we're working with professional data analytics to collect some data, and we've run into a couple of issues with parent and caregiver surveys. And so I just wanted to tap into this group to kind of see, like, if we were going to do some surveying, what kind of things have worked well in the past, what kind of concerns come up amongst data collection and things like that with your, specifically we're looking at parents, caregivers, and students. So yeah, those are my two quick things. And feel free to email me, Angela at Bike and Men. I'll put it in the chat as well. But if you have any ideas or want more information.
Cool. Thanks, Angela. And yes, happy to summarize some of that and send it out in the follow-up email. So.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Awesome. With that, I think I will call us done for the day. Thank you, everybody. It was great having you all on the call. I feel like we're going to continue to be busy during the summer, even though students are going to be out enjoying all of the great infrastructure that you all are doing. So I hope folks get outside today if you are in a cubicle and enjoy some weather, whether it's nice or not. And I will see you all on next month's call. Take care.